Let's get into this. Hello everyone, my name is Kay, and welcome back to my channel. So I, as well as many of you of course, got super sucked into the world of NFL cheerleading. The curl, the bedazzled two pieces, the high kicks were instrumental in capturing our attention. So much so that it's been in the top 10 of Netflix quite consistently when it releases, which is no surprise due to Greg Whiteley's involvement. You know, the director behind Last Chance U and my personal favorite Cheer. I was intrigued, to say the least, when I saw Greg decide to pursue the DCC. He gets to the heart of things and wants to tell your story the way you envision it, not by the production or the powers that be. Last year, the America's Sweethearts documentary had everybody and their mothers sad. People performing Thunderstruck became the norm. Our jaws dropped as we saw how talented and hardworking these women are, but even more shocked that this profession isn't as glamorous as one might expect it to be. The cracks of the DCC empire were steadily exposed in a way that hadn't been shown to us prior. It was vulnerable, intimate, warm yet sterile, and was representative of the highs and lows of entering professional dance. I had a very interesting experience while watching this series because I grew up with the CMT reality show Making the Team when I was a literal teenager. Surprise, surprise.
No. I know that I know I messed up a lot tonight, but please, no. This was my worst fear, to be the last cut. I know I can do this. I know I can do this.
Did you just watch your friends crash and burn?
Oh, man.
If you saw her crossing the street and a car was coming, did you tell her to stop?
I have multiple times.
I think this is a better look for me as far as trying to make the team. I think this will increase my chances.
But with the recent release of season 2 dropping so many more bombshells, I thought it was time to throw my hat in the ring and discuss America's Sweethearts. We're gonna discuss the perception of the documentary, how systemic issues intersect the cheerleaders' experiences, and where DCC may be heading in the future. As you could probably guess, we have quite a bit to talk about, so let's get started. After 16 seasons of Making the Team, CMT decided to not renew the show for another season. Fans were confused about this for various reasons, especially considering the show's immense popularity. Some unsavory behind-the-scenes drama started to arise that could have led to the show's cancellation. Nevertheless, Kelly was adamant to bring the DCC to a streaming platform, and she was able to do so via Netflix. Enter Greg Whiteley, the Emmy Award-winning director.
That was one of the most fun things I've ever done professionally, was screen the finished cut of the first 2 episodes for all of you. Kelly and I and Charlotte, when we were talking about it, it was almost an afterthought. And then when I sat down, I suddenly became really nervous. Only one other time have I ever watched it with the subject of the person that I was attempting to document.
It became very apparent to me that the Cowboys sought Greg out due to the success of his other projects. You know, it didn't feel like Greg as a documentarian went to the Cowboys for this. And with Netflix not being restricted by the organization's management, the documentary was able to peel back many layers that didn't paint a singular picture. This was especially surprising given the history of the DCC, emphasizing controlling their likeness and image. In fact, Charlotte was a massive inspiration for Greg pursuing the documentary, and she seemed happy with the result and the filming process, which I feel tells you everything you need to know. Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the hot button money topic.
There's a lot of cynicism around pay for NFL cheerleaders, and as it should be. They're not paid a lot, but the facts are is that they actually don't come here for the money. They come here for something that's actually bigger than that to them.
The cheerleaders' wages sparked significant controversy, with many people outraged over them making the salary equivalent to that of a full-time Chick-fil-A worker.
Making like a Chick-fil-A worker that works full-time.
The Dallas Cowboys organization, according to Sports Illustrated, is currently worth $10 billion. To add a bee sting to an already throbbing wound, Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys owner, alleged net worth is $19 billion. The average NFL player earns $2 million a season, but many NFL contracts are worth significantly more. That's quite the discrepancy between the players and cheerleaders that is very hard to overlook. During the inception of the DCC, the cheerleaders were paid a whopping
$15 a game, $14.12 after taxes.
And that did not include practicing 5 nights a week for 4 to 5 hours.
There's often this perception that since the cheerleaders know what they're getting themselves into, this somehow absolves any discussion of financial inequity. But the same sentiments people have been frustrated over recently were also discussed in the 70s and 80s.
I do think that the Cowboys were exploiting these girls financially, not their bodies. I mean, they would have done it anyhow. They probably would have been models or something, but why not pay them more?
They are more than cheerleaders. They are an institution unto themselves. They're bigger than the football team, which makes the double standard that they're living under all the crazy.
But one thing that does need to be noted is that financial exploitation starts at the top and trickles down. The first DCC director, Dee Brock, had to split her $600 wage with the choreographer, Texie Waterman, because the owner of the Dallas Cowboys at the time, Tex Stram, didn't want to pay for a choreographer. I want you to look me in the eye, okay? Look me in the eye and tell me prestigious choreographers in the dance industry now, such as Molly Long, Derek Hub, Shannon Mather, Sean Bankhead, etc., would choreograph for professional dancers for low compensation. You see how absurd it sounds for professionals in their field to accept being lowballed for the privilege and honored to share their art. These sentiments of NFL cheerleaders wanting fair and equitable pay have become extremely resonant in recent years across many teams. The DCC are by no means exceptions for advocating for fair pay for their organization. One such case that many people are probably familiar with is that of former DCC Erica Wilkins. She grew up as a competitive dancer and was actually recruited to audition for the team, which is commonplace, as we've seen.
So when I was in college, they kept reaching out and I was like kind of teetering, talked to a couple girls that were on the team that I was friends with. She's like my older sister. Was like in the hospital when I was born. She was a DCC for 3 years.
Who?
Megan Carciopolo.
Okay.
She was on it when Cash Kashera was on it in them.
And then my senior year, the recruitment coach called my coach at the time and she was like, hey, does Maggie still want to audition for the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders? We think she'd be great.
The recruiter was surprised that when she found Erica, she happened to only be 16, and she asked her if she would possibly be interested in auditioning when she turned 18. Erica told the recruiter that she would love to audition, but she needed to attend college first, where she attended LSU, which is home to many former DCCs. And current. After she graduated LSU, she auditioned for the team in 2014, where she was an instant standout.
There are rookie candidates that are stronger than the veterans. Dang it, she's great. Yes. I thought Erica was a wow solo. She attacked the music.
Throughout Erica's tenure, she was a member of their show group, which was a squad that consisted of the most technically trained dancers. They are the ones that traveled on the USO tours and did performances outside of game day. She was also featured on their swimsuit calendar and overall was a very beloved and popular cheerleader. But Erica's time with the DCC would come to a close due to suffering from a severe neck and shoulder injury, and soon after, she sued the Cowboys for lost wages.
But Erica Wilkins says the stardust began to fade under the harsh realities of dollars and cents. $8 an hour, in fact, for the women cheering on America's team.
Just saying, what about all of the endorsement deals and advertisement deals that you get money from? And I'm going, we're not, that's not true. That's simply not true. We're not allowed to get endorsements like the players.
Erica revealed that she was paid $8 an hour for practices and $200 per game. For appearances, she was paid a flat fee of $100 her first year, $200 her second, $300 her third, but it caps at $500 during one's fifth year. And show group appearances were capped at $250 no matter a member's tenure, which is unfortunate on show group side because they don't do that anymore, along with their swimsuit calendar, which is pretty bizarre considering it was a moneymaker. As we've seen in the documentary, the women often have full-time jobs in addition to working for the DCC. Being on the squad is expected to take priority over your job and your personal life. There are women who quit their day jobs just for training camp because it is so strenuous and so draining.
I wanted to ask you one thing. What did you decide about your job?
I'm gonna go ahead and quit. I would be able to do it, but the driving, I literally have to go to Wichita Falls and Waco every 2 weeks.
I hate for you to lose your job, but maybe you made the right decision.
And while filming for the CMT reality show Making the Team, the cheerleaders were only paid for the hours they were dancing. So interviews, waiting for judges to deliberate, waiting to be called into the office, the cheerleaders were not compensated for that time. And since the consensus mentality portrays cheerleaders as solely grateful for the opportunities, it can be very difficult to voice concerns about employment conditions. If you're the one person asking questions, you might not get put on appearances. You might get pushed back in the formations. People just live in a constant state of fear, but everyone's too afraid to say anything because unlike the players, we don't sign a contract that guarantees us anything.
Fear had a lot to do with my direction, I think.
People had a lot to say when this news first dropped. Many agreed with Erica's sentiment regarding how obscene the cheerleaders' pay was, especially considering for the amount of hours they put in weekly, but she got just as much, if not more backlash, which has now recently garnered the backlash of the backlash because that's just how the internet goes. The initial wave of backlash Erica received was mainly from the general public, insinuating that she should be grateful for the opportunities and that she knew what she was getting into. But the second wave of backlash, unexpectedly and most unfortunately, came from former cheerleaders, some of which who were her own teammates. A few DCCs took to social media to oppose Erica's stance and lawsuit. Melissa Rycroft, who was most notable for her time on Dancing with the Stars and The Bachelor, sadly fell into this pitfall. But in an all but infamous post by Judy Trammell's daughter Cassie,
I'm so disappointed that the organization that my mother was and still is a part of would even be remotely jeopardized by false allegations. It is not a career. I'm all for equal rights, but when we auditioned, and some re-auditioned multiple times, we all knew how much money was on the table.
Now, there's a few things to point out with these posts. For one, it's understandable that you enjoy dancing and you enjoy performing for people and that it is indeed an honor and a privilege. As a dancer myself, I understand that sentiment. However, to go after someone who is wanting to champion for something, even if you don't agree with it, is a little harsh as someone who is a former cheerleader, especially considering that Erica was not even paid for some of the appearances she did while she was on the team. I don't want to harp on these two women specifically because they are in fact people. It's just that it's difficult to talk about wages when it comes to DCC without mentioning this situation. I genuinely hope the former cheerleaders who went after Erica understood that her intentions were pure. She has always and consistently maintained that she was doing this to pave the road for future cheerleaders, hence why she did not initially accept the settlement. But Erica is far from the only DCC to have come forward about the struggles when it comes to wages. Former DCC Marissa has been very vocal about how she's had to work multiple jobs to make ends meet, and that made being on the squad extremely difficult despite her enjoying showing her experiences. One of the more interesting insights when it comes to DCC pay comes from former cheerleader Kat. She went onto a podcast and discussed her experiences on the squad, particularly while she was in training camp for her rookie year, and reveals a lot about the finances and how much she had to spend and certain surveillance tactics that did contribute to her pay.
Find out you make it to finals. You find out on the 17th, right, that you make it to finals. And you're like, wow. And they ask you to come back in 2 weeks. And finals is on a Saturday. We do our solo and we do everything with the vets in a full thing. Like everyone sees us, right? As a full team, 50 girls. And we're trying to make it to training camps. And training camp starts Monday. So basically, we had to move all of our stuff down. I moved here on finals day being like, oh dear God, if I do not make it to training camp, I have to get an apartment back in North Carolina because I canceled my lease. I moved out and I was like, I have to make this team. I have to make it into training camp, period, because I don't have another option. It's so crazy because I saved $10,000 and I was like, I'm going to be perfect. $10,000 in 2 months is going to keep me. We're not from Dallas, so a lot of us booked hotels or booked something in Fort Worth. And Fort Worth is an hour and a half from where we're training. And Dallas is so spread out. And if you don't know where you're going, if you don't have connections or people here and you're just walking in blind like a lot of us do, you are screwed. You have screwed yourself. And I royally went through that $10,000 quickly.
Also, all the hair tools, all the hair stuff, all the makeup, all the primer, everything you need to look the way you is an investment.
And you're not a part of the sponsorship yet until you're on the team. Well, I think girls get it now, but my rookie year, that wasn't a thing. Like you paid for everything out of pocket and like we did get a little stipend. Obviously the pricing changed too when I first made the team. Our hourly was minimum wage. We were doing all this, right? And we could only clock for practices. And you would clock from 7 to 11 no matter what, because they made a rule after 11 o'clock, you're done. We couldn't dance after 11 o'clock. Game day is the Texans at 12 p.m. Kickoff starts at 12, right?
Okay.
The bus from the Star, because we bus from the Star to the stadium. If you live in Dallas, which is a 45-minute drive from Dallas to the Star, the bus departs at 6:15. So it's taking off at 6:15. So the latest you can be on the bus is at 6 a.m. If you walk on the bus at 6:02, they look at you, they write a note.
Oh dear.
And it goes, everyone has a binder. So I walked on to the bus probably like my third year without makeup on. I had like lashes and a brow. It was an early game. I had like family issues going on. I told them that and I was like, hey, I'm having a rough morning. I apologize. I wasn't able to get dressed. Perfectly fine. I roll up, just lashes and a brow. And another staff member who I did not inform because it's none of your freaking business said, why don't you have makeup on? I'm docking an hour from your pay.
Luckily, there does seem to be a glimmer of hope as former training camp candidate Ari discussed that she was able to stay at the Gaylord Texan and the DCC funded it. They didn't pay for food or any other essentials, but at least the cost of staying there was covered, and they could also stay with a former cheerleader.
And then from camp, they give you the option. They're like, you can live in the Gaylord. If you're not from there, live in the Gaylord, or you can live with like an alum. And I just like knew myself, like I need my own space and stuff. Looking back, I would have chose to live like with an alumni just because there's no kitchen.
I was gonna say, who pays for it?
Yeah. They pay for the hotel, but like food and everything, like you have to pay for.
Also, I need to point this out real quick because I'm seeing a pattern of comments online throughout the documentary, especially during season 1, where people were citing the NBC Sports Boston report that stated that the cheerleaders earned $15 and $20 an hour, $500 a game, which averaged around a salary of $75K a year. But according to Reece from the Unplanned podcast, this isn't entirely accurate.
I don't know if this is true, but the internet was saying something about $75,000 a year for a cheerleader. I don't know if that's true. Was that above?
It's not that much, Matt.
Is
That's
what
it says on Google, though.
Yeah, there is your testament to never trust what Google says.
So it's lower. It's lower than that.
Yes, I would say so.
I don't know. I just found that to be pretty funny. Obviously, wages have changed. I'll touch on that in a little bit. And I often wonder if these same sentiments are spewed whenever male sports or male interests are involved whenever it comes to financial compensation. Oftentimes, they are not given the same weight or attention as those when it comes to female sports and interests. There is an inherent undertone to these comments about being angry and frustrated over people outraged over the low pay of the cheerleaders.
There's probably some random linebacker who's on the Cowboys that makes way more money than a freaking teacher or a medical resident or any other job that you deem to be important but doesn't make as much money. But you aren't mad at that linebacker. You're mad at the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Why is that? There are literally bench warmers on NBA teams that get a full hour of playing time in an entire season that will touch more money than most of us will ever see in a lifetime. And I hardly ever hear people saying things like, oh, you think this random bench warmer on the Portland Trailblazers should be making more money than me? Nobody ever says that. But again, y'all love saying that with women.
In season 2 of the documentary, financial inequity was a huge storyline, with many of the cheerleaders and people within their social circle very vocal about the financial inequities.
There's reports saying that you guys make like $500 a game. Is that hard for you?
Y'all are professional dancers, and y'all deserve to get paid a lot more.
Kelly and Judy, at least on screen, seemed incredibly understanding and receptive of the cheerleaders' frustrations over them being paid. These sentiments of wanting fair and equitable pay are no longer an unpopular opinion.
Yes, we should still do something outside of just cheering, but there's so many ways to make this something that people can actually like live off of, because for us to all like be struggling financially is it's I'm kind of over it.
This is a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's like the #1 sports franchise in the industry, so it kind of does not translate.
Armani, Jada, and Megan, along with a few other teammates, decided to take legal action. And while it was a very difficult fight, they ended up successful. The DCC in the 2025 season is going to be receiving a 400% pay raise, and following in the footsteps of Erica, who paved the road for this change.
They wanted to give us a raise.
This is the moment Erica Wilkins heard the words she's wanted to hear for years.
Wow. Which is like,
it's amazing.
Life-changing.
And by championing change and desiring to make a difference, the season 2 of America's Sweethearts decided to directly address the criticism from the first season. Outside of pay, diversity was another big point of contention with many people. The DCC have a very interesting history regarding race and diversity, as Kelly's predecessor Suzanne Mitchell did aspire to have a group of diverse women from different races and different backgrounds, which was pretty monumental considering that Dallas was still segregated.
The diversity of the cheerleaders was important to Suzanne. She wanted to pick a different variety of girls so that the people in the stands and on the television could have somebody they could relate to.
The Dallas Cowboys were probably one of the single most important factors of integration in the city of Dallas. Black people went to black churches, white people went to white churches. Black people went to black schools, and white people went to white schools. Everybody went to Texas Stadium on Sunday.
However, this does not absolve the organization from criticism for how minorities are portrayed, or even how different cultures are portrayed. In season 1 of America's Sweethearts, many people raised their eyebrows when the women of color were the ones that were eliminated from training camp first and were not given any more time to improve.
And out of all the people that y'all selected to, follow and interview and get the backstory as to why they want to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, all of them except for one was white. How does that work exactly? And it definitely wasn't that the black and brown girls wasn't, because a few of them white girls did not have it, and they still elected to choose them over the black and brown girls. Like stuff that they could have actually worked on and had time to improve, they gave it to the white girls. Says a lot, says a lot, says a lot.
America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders on Netflix.
Where are the Black girls stories? That should be it. That should be the post.
Even while looking back on making the team, it is pretty noticeable that they were cutting women of color often during the end of training camp for similar issues that their white counterparts had. But one of the most egregious incidences that happened during the making the team era was when former DCC Whitney Islib went to a private Halloween party and dressed up as Lil Wayne in a costume that has not aged well at all. This incident actually made national news, with many people inquiring and making surveys trying to see if DCC was a racist organization. When Kelly addressed this incident in making the team, she essentially relegated it as the cheerleaders needing to be careful with the people they go, the people they're with, as they are in the limelight. But I feel as if we're missing the bigger picture here. And as I mentioned before, this did translate in America's Sweethearts with the cuts of Anisha in season 1 and Paris in season 2. Anisha was the 31-year-old orthodontist who had such an amazing solo. She did a Bollywood hip-hop fusion routine, and during the training camp first meeting, she was given a Barbie. For those of you who don't know, the Barbies are given to the cheerleaders who had amazing performances during their final solo, so Anisha was obviously gonna get one, but the only two Barbies that Anisha was able to choose from were blonde and brunette, both of which were white. Mind you, the Barbie line during the inception had black and brown dolls. So I'm not sure how this happened.
One of the designers of Barbie, they actually approached us. Hey, would you guys be at all interested in making a Barbie doll? This was one of 3 very...
Throughout training camp, Anisha's primary concern was her foot closure during the kick line. Outside of that, the criticisms lobbied towards her were deliberately vague. Anne Helen Peterson also discusses this very incident in her Substack called Culture Study. The high kick itself also functions as a neutral cutting mechanism. When Anisha, who is Indian American, gets cut, Kelly and Judy tell her that the root of her problem was her kicks. No amount of practice could change the fact that the other women out there had been practicing this style of kick since they were children. The implication, Anisha, whose tryout performance was to a Bollywood song, didn't grow up in the American dance tradition, so she could never cut it as a DCC. This is how organizations like DCC, obsessed with legacy, stay white as they do, by maintaining a status quo that requires investment and experience and a specific sort of American experience. And in the case of Paris, we didn't get to see too much of her, but fun fact, I did watch her at Dance Makers, which is a dance convention, because that's where she was assisting along with Leah, and they are so flippin' talented. To be honest, when she was cut second, I was just truly baffled. There could have been other reasons for why Paris was cut that we just didn't see, but given how talented she is, I was a bit confused. These controversies just seem a little interesting to me because prominent DCCs that many people have grown up with, such as Nicole Hamilton, Dara McFarlane, Darren Durbany, were all championed while being on the squad. Quite literally, the aspirational cheerleaders were black women, dark-skinned black women to be specific. But in season 2 of America's Sweethearts, we did get a lot more storylines related to the black women. When it came to Armani's, Alopecia's storyline, and how hair in the black community is such a staple, and it was difficult for her to fully grasp how hard it would be to not have hair, and how that all attributed to her needing to be able to be free of that, was just such a refreshing and poignant story. Jada's storyline was one I was very familiar with because it was also briefly shared on Making the Team, but it went into much more detail. And seeing Jada as sort of the main character in America's Sweethearts just made me deeply happy. Seeing Kayla being able to make the team after she was cut last season and being able to train, work harder, and then make it back as a veteran. It seems Kelly and Judy, as well as the people working on the documentary, understood the criticism camp, and they actually decided to make changes. In recent years as well, DCC has also been centering a lot of the Black women and them discussing their experiences on the squad. The Black women are now able to wear their natural hair, they're able to wear their braids, their locks, they're able to embrace their ethnicity fully. So it's genuinely cool to see that DCC is becoming much more accepting and open of women of color.
Representation matters, and we've all probably had people in our inbox, whether it's parents or a high school brown cheerleader, reach out just because they're happy to see someone that looks like them. And that's why I love mediums like social media and the TV show, because prior to that, I don't know if little brown girls knew that this was even an option or a place for them. Yeah. I just want to say on air, I'm so inspired by the both of you. I'm the mom of a little brown girl. She's 3 and her hair is beautiful like yours. And I was telling Shandi this story at Pro Bowl. I wrote a poem because I wanted her to feel beauty in her natural state, beaming with joy when I see you guys rock your natural hair. And I hope my daughter sees pictures and loves you. And I'm working on myself and undoing years and years of programmed beauty.
Body image, thinness, and body dysmorphia is one of the biggest aspects of DCC that they had to course correct.
These companies are selling the idea that women need to look this way. And if you buy this product, you will look like this.
Cheerleaders in the 70s and 80s were wrapping their bodies in saran wrap, taking diuretics, and wearing garbage suits while exercising. Suzanne Mitchell and the choreographer Texie Waterman were also helping the cheerleaders with these disordered eating habits. Making the team discuss this aspect heavily. Nearly every season, there was at least 1 or 2 cheerleaders that were berated for their weight. During the early seasons of Making the Team, the women would have to enter body fat machines, and they had to be within a certain percentage, otherwise they were immediately cut or given a extremely small window of opportunity to lose weight while in training camp. 2 girls particularly during the Making the Team era that always stood out whenever it came to body image were the training camp candidates Grace Sells and Liz Reuter. Both of these girls were extremely talented, technically trained dancers whose sole problem was their weight.
Grace looks stumpy. Grace can sell it, and she can be fun to watch, but also her weight kind of fluctuates, so that's a concern of mine.
The criticism Grace received was particularly egregious, considering that she just generally had wider hips and she quite literally had visible abs.
We were looking back through all of your notes, and every one of them from the judges at auditions say the same thing. Cute showmanship, fun to watch. Every one of them say soft in the midsection. I really would like you to consider just basically re-auditioning and coming back at your leanest. Okay. I'm sorry, but we're out of time. That's not something you can rush safely.
Liz Reuter, on the other hand, was a favorite by Judy because of how technically trained she is. She came from the Kilgore Rangerettes, which is a very prestigious dance team in Texas. She had great power, great precision, her timing was impeccable, and she was very clean. She was basically everything they could want in a cheerleader. The comments that Liz received on Making the Team, in my personal opinion, were the most dehumanizing of anybody else.
Elizabeth Reuter, you look chunky in your middle. You will have assignments with Jay. Okay, what size are these? These are mediums. Okay, this is what you get to say goodbye to with Jay.
Yes,
and by the way, she's in a medium. You want her in a large short. Right now, she's gonna have to. I mean, that's...
I'm working on it.
I'd say yes. Let's go up and then size it down.
Still pretty.
It's beautiful.
I know.
And you can see...
I know.
Her
I know, I saw.
fat puff in there.
I know that I'm too big right now.
We love your performing. We love your attitude. Our intent for you to lose weight was too aggressive. It really was. And we brought you into training camp to see just that. You need more time, that's all.
And this in turn sparked Kelly to have a very specific proportion for cheerleaders on the squad. The figure that Kelly most wanted in the uniform at the time was someone that had 36, 24, 36. And for the women that were trying out that didn't have that hourglass figure, they were criticized relentlessly. Megan Pravdin and Vivian Rolena were two specific examples of this because their figures were just more stocky. And Helen Peterson also talked about how the uniform is a neutral cutting mechanism. If your body doesn't look right in the uniform, the problem isn't the uniform. The problem is your body. The DCC uniform was designed for the proportions of a slender, medium-height woman with medium-sized boobs. Lots of different types of people have that body, but it's not a coincidence that it's a body type most common among white women. In America's Sweethearts, we see Victoria be very vocal about her body image and her struggles with eating disorders.
I think it's harder for girls not to even just not want to starve themselves, because I know when I look in the uniform, I'm always like, oh man, I need to lose at least 3 pounds. We were weighing in like every week. And sometimes it would be like at 11 p.m.
You did have some judges say they wanted you to tone up your tummy.
I didn't really know how to handle that.
In season 2 of America's Sweethearts, we also found out that Dayton, who was another legacy candidate, also struggled with her body image and struggled with eating disorders.
I recently got out of a 5-year relationship, and I did struggle with eating disorder for a long time, but I think recovering from that and just feeling happy about what I was doing, finding new activities that were healthy for me, working on myself, that's when it started to get better.
It's very clear when it comes to the professional dance world, not just DCC, the strict beauty standards are not taken as serious until there is a noticeable issue. Even though the past of the DCC when it comes to weight has not been very forgiving, in recent years, DCC has started to make some changes. Kelly has said in multiple interviews that they do not talk about weight anymore.
I've learned, and I hope I've grown through the years too, to understand just how fragile that conversation can be. Much like in Hollywood, wardrobe is a part of our presentation, and the uniform is not as forgiving as just normal street clothes, so there's that reality. And we don't talk about weight anymore. We don't weigh anymore. That is dated, and it doesn't feel right anymore. We try to grow as our society does.
Whether or not they're possibly engaging in unhealthy habits is something we don't know, but at least from what Kelly is showing us, they're definitely becoming more aware, but this also goes hand in hand with the cheerleaders embracing their own sexuality.
We're looking for an all-American, sexy girl.
They are supposed to portray a sexy vixen while they are performing, but they are supposed to be pure and innocent simultaneously. The Cowboys originally in 1967 were comprised of a co-ed high school cheer team, but it wasn't until Bubbles Cash popped onto the scene and the former Cowboys owner Tex Stram spotted an opportunity. But the irony of the DCC being inspired by a stripper is particularly funny because in making the team, women that were engaging in those very same behaviors were ridiculed to no end.
Your hair, your nails, it all kind of looks like I'd be scared if I didn't know better that you were a stripper.
With my nails?
Your nails, hair, style of dance.
But by the powers that be controlling the women's sexuality, this also can lead into things of ownership that can lead into some dangerous implications.
My biggest concern is I need you to explain these photos.
See, yeah, my ex-boyfriend did that. Yeah, he's just trying to do that, ruin my life, so.
You took the photos?
Yeah. And he took photos of me.
And these dangerous implications can lead to the women experiencing harassment. In America's Sweethearts Season 1, we see Sophie being groped by a photographer at a game, and he was not charged for his actions. They banned him from the stadium even though he was immediately identified, which is not too dissimilar to another situation. Back in 2015, 4 former cheerleaders accused the senior vice president of public relations at the time, Richard Richard Dalrymple for secretly filming them changing in their dressing room. The 4 cheerleaders were paid a settlement of $2.4 million, with each of them receiving around $400,000 to remain silent, so we'll never know the full details. But this isn't an isolated incident with Dalrymple. He was also accused by a Cowboys fan of taking an upskirt photo of Charlotte, and when he issued a statement regarding these 2 allegations, he, of course, denied them. People who know me, coworkers, the media, and colleagues know who I am and what I'm about. I understand the very serious nature of these claims and do not take them lightly. The accusations are, however, false. One was accidental and the other simply did not happen. But one of the more nuanced perspectives in this situation comes from Paige Sparks over on TikTok. I couldn't put my finger onto why the situation bothered me until I watched her video.
One of the cheerleaders alleges she clearly saw Dalrymple hide behind part wall and recording or taking pictures or otherwise pointing his phone at them while they were in various states of undress. The cheerleader alleges after she realized what he was doing, she yelled, "Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here," and he ran away. After this, the Cowboys did not call the police, even though this could be a misdemeanor in Texas to record people without their consent in this kind of setting. And instead, they did their own internal investigation that included confiscating Dalrymple's phone and getting his passwords to his iCloud so they can see what information was taken, if any, what was stored, what was sent. After their own internal investigation and forensic analysis of the phone, general counsel for the Cowboys, that means their main head lawyer, said there was no evidence that any videos or pictures had been taken or that any messages of the cheerleaders had been sent by Dalrymple. Wait a minute, do you see the wording that was used there? General counsel said there was no evidence, not that there was no photo. You want to be really careful when we're looking at word choice like this in a form of a denial because the language matters. Were there no photos on the phone or is there now no evidence? Those are 2 very different things.
Alright, I'm popping in once again because there's a few other instances that I want to mention in regards to safety. So back in 2020, this was when CMT was filming season 15 of Making the Team, and this was during the pandemic. The dance industry was pretty much on lockdown as with anything else, but DCC decided to film a show throughout the pandemic to drive up ratings. And former DCC Hannah has spoken up about how CMT did not take proper precautions to ensure everyone was remaining socially distant and safe, which resulted in the show painting Hannah as disinterested, even capitalizing on her own mental health to propel the show more, which Hannah called out as she should have. I really want you to watch season 15 of Making the Team with a very critical eye. There just seems to be many incidences regarding safety that have just fallen through the cracks. Many of the cheerleaders have also discussed in the documentary of them feeling unsafe and people stalking them, people harassing them, and sending death threats.
Letters sent to my personal address of like, I feel like we're best friends. I know where you live.
There was somebody that kept calling the Dallas Cowboys, and they were going to kill me.
While these certain situations have painted a less than savory image on the Cowboys as well as parts of the cheerleaders, it does seem that they, in some ways, are making progress. The America's Sweethearts documentary allowed people to be able to see more within the DCC world and for us to be able to actually advocate for things to be changed. People are having serious discussions over the inequities and injustices going on. And as we continue to navigate throughout the landscape of the DCC, hopefully other industries within dance can see what NFL cheerleaders are doing by raising their wages, and hopefully dance as a whole will start being more valued. To be honest, I don't generally have huge thoughts on the docuseries. There were certain aspects that worked better on Making the Team than America's Sweethearts. Some found America's Sweethearts to be lackluster or boring. I do wish we got to see more of the girls dancing. Season 2 was better with showing the women dancing, but I wish we got more opportunities to see them training and growing, and also we would get to know more about the training camp candidates because it did feel rushed at points. But I was honestly very aware with so many of the cheerleaders that were in the docuseries because they're pretty known in the dance community. I was actually kind of jump scared when I saw Michelle audition because she went to Danceology. The dance community was just kind of eating with this season. In general, it seems that DCC, especially with the pay raise, are going to get a lot more people. Most people remember Charlie through her Arizona State days, but I was most familiar with Charlie through her Shannon Mather days. I'm just very familiar with these girls outside of NFL cheer, that it's interesting and somewhat surprising that so many of them are going to the NFL path. I'm really hopeful for the future of DCC, and it definitely seems that we're headed in a better direction. Well, everyone, that is pretty much all I have to say. I sort of wanted to add my thoughts on the end on America's Sweethearts as a whole because I did want to talk about DCC through a bit of a more critical lens. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later or whenever I appear next. Bye.